Hello, attorneys.
Do you guys want to say? There's no direct deposit. Oh, that's right, there's no direct deposit, so it's just double A minus.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Next up, we have the fiscal year 26 budget work session.
All right, before we get started, just as a note, the goal was to bring the first draft budget as outlined in the new budget timeline. The budget timeline has today being the first view of the budget. Please note that it is in draft format, and we're continuing to update that information as we go through. We are taking a different approach this year to having a budget work session. We will start with the overall budget, and then we will back into department and then also school budgets. The board has been provided with all of the purchase services for the 25-26 school year, in addition to the proposed purchase services for the 25-26 school year. And so at this moment, I will hand it over to Chris Hoser, who will jump straight into the budget. We are asking that if you have questions, please jump in and pause with those questions while we are presenting, so that way I can note them as we go through for proposed changes for the next meeting, which will be held on June 12th. Mr. Hoser, I have turned it over to you, and please let me know where you would like for me to start.
Thank you, everyone. My name is Chris Holzer, CFO here at the school district. Dr. Jamieson, if you could start on the operating funds summary projections, operating charts, there's the bottom of the index there. Yep, page 36.
Perfect.
One. There you go. Okay, so as Dr. Jamieson noted, we will start with the overall look at the operating budget. Right now, for the most part, you've seen a lot of these numbers before. They have been adjusted slightly. They've been adjusted further since we've posted this to the agenda. As was noted before, this is a draft and will continue to be in draft until the very last moment when the final budget approval meeting goes live. We spent most of the day on it today and on and off all week. So starting with local revenue, remembering that local revenue sources are our local tax revenues along with our fee-based services such as preschool, Discover Club, or before and after care. We also have Prop C funds that are also in there. So we're projecting that at this moment to be $28.4 million. County revenue is $241,000. You can see the state number there at 4.1, which is up slightly over the prior year, and that's primarily due to the changing of the foundation formula to include weighted membership in addition to ADA or attendance. So that has changed things. Also, our attendance projections for next year are slightly better. Remembering, of course, that the revenue from our state funding is based on our attendance numbers from either the current and prior to or the prior year, just depending on which funding stream we're talking about. So then we have the non-current revenue, and in this case that's directly related to reimbursements from partner districts as we transport any homeless students back and forth from their districts. On the expenditure side, salaries have increased to $7.8 million. The last time you saw this, we did have a number of additions still to make in the form of extra duties, 6131s. And then the benefits at $5.8 million, we did hear from the trust this past week as we got the rates in. Our increase for the year will be 18.8%. So that you don't see the full impact of that here. You will on the next version, but that did make a significant difference once we applied that full change. And then on the purchase services side, $3.8 million, which is down from the prior year, down about $106,000, I believe. And then on the supply side, $2.5 million, which is up. I would like to note that both in purchase services and supplies, we have expenditures that are tied to the revenue of the CBE grant that was awarded last year. So some of those, some of these line items are somewhat inflated from where they would typically be due to that project and those grant funds. Then on the capital outlay side, we have 92,720. I used to say $1 million. The majority of the capital outlay expenditures have been moved over to the bond side. So instead of the operating budget handling those have been folded into the proceeds that Mr. Boyd just discussed. Overall, total expenditures are estimated at this point to be $30.2 million, which would end us with a final fund balance on the operating side of 43.7%. So I will pause here if you have any questions about this. I know this is a very high level and we'll get a little bit deeper as we progress through the evening.
I just have one clarifying question about the CBE grant. We got the funds last year, so they showed up as a, or
Both, actually. We got,
both this year too?
yeah, we got a small, no,
Okay,
you're talking about hundreds of $1,000. Small isn't probably the right word, but we got a significant portion at the end of last fiscal year in our June distribution, and we got another distribution to finish off that funding in July of the next year.
okay, so there's some offset for that then with the, okay, thank you.
And some of those funds were expended this year.
Yeah.
And it will likely take 3 years to expend all those funds. So anticipate seeing CDE expenditures for the next 2 fiscal years.
Okay, thank you.
Can I get some additional clarity on the benefits line increase? I had noted in my review earlier that you had indicated an 18% increase in premiums for insurance. Obviously, that is a piece of what's included in the benefits section. I think the increase in benefits was that line item, you know, between what's budgeted for 2025 and what's budgeted for 2026 right here is, you know, pretty minor. So what, if this isn't the number indicating the 18%, you know, increase in premiums, what is a more realistic ballpark right now?
We do have the current working draft.
Chris, didn't you originally, the first budget that came through, you actually were budgeting at 20% because we had not yet received the
As we worked
information?
through position
Yeah.
control, we found that not all of the benefits were being captured. So once we captured everything, it did jump that number.
While Chris and Tony are looking up the answers, we actually invited Tony, the accountant, to be a participant so that we can answer
Here it is.
the questions live time.
It wasn't loading. So right now we have 6.4 million, Katie, is where that benefits number ultimately landed.
So it's $500,000 higher. Okay.
And the trust is actually working to make some adjustments. They did make some. That information was actually shared with the budget committee through the NEA, but they are actually deficit spending right now.
Yeah, and they're making a number of shifts to assist in the cash flow issues that they are having. The 2 of the primary ones, they're switching the order of operations. We have an HRA plan, so the HRA has typically been utilized first. Those funds have been used first. Now it will be the employees' funds are used first, and then the HRA funds will kick in. And then the second biggest one is we're doing a pre-funding payment, essentially. So every district in the trust will make a large lump sum payment at the beginning of the fiscal year. And then as we get in later into the fall, for the subsequent months of the fiscal year, they'll reimburse that. But they needed that initial influx of cash beginning of the year to pay the prior year's claims that come due in the summer.
So they'll repay it if they can.
If they can.
Is the key. Right,
Yes.
that's, okay.
And it's truly
That's
about
okay.
cash flow.
Yeah. Any other questions? Sorry. Okay.
All right, fantastic. Let's move on. Dr. Jameson, we're going to go to the building summary.
Is there one in particular you want me to start as a starting point?
Page
Let's go to
16.
Building department budgets.
Perfect.
Top one right there, we just saw.
Awesome.
Fantastic. Okay, so we won't read all that text to you. I hope at some point you are able to peruse it. And that, I think, does a fairly adequate job of describing what's happening in these budgets. But let's go ahead and start the order that you're looking at them in is slightly different from the order that I'm presenting from. So I will, we're starting, is this the Early Childhood Center?
It is.
Okay. So on the Early Childhood Center, we are anticipating a $496,137,000 increase, which is about 14.4% on salaries and an 11.4% on benefits. Of course, we've already discussed those numbers will shift as we move into the next draft. But right now, those numbers are as presented before you, and those are directly related to the increases to teacher salaries and support staff salaries and administrator salaries at that 3.75%. And it's worth noting, just because it is a large percentage, that the teacher increase, in addition to their 2.75% step increase that happens year over year, that's built into the function of the schedule, is a 8% increase to the base. There will be a 9% increase to the base in the subsequent fiscal year, so that would be fiscal 27, and ongoing conversations with what the other increases will be as the budget is developed for the next year. So on the purchase service side, we're looking at an increase of $18,831, and the majority of that is, a portion of that is professional development that has been added to the budget, as well as some of those CBE opportunities that Dr. McGee and his learning team have added. Supplies are down at this point by 66,000, almost 67,000 here, and capital outlay is at 5,600. And I believe that is either for an audiometer or something for our PAT folks to do evaluations on our youngest, I guess they're not students yet, some of our youngest children in the district.
I had a quick question. So in looking at supplies, you know, it looks like the last 2 years, we sort of started out pretty far under budget and increased during the year. So like, and then we have a huge drop there. Are we really gonna be able to, like, what did we cut, or were we buying something the prior 2 years that we aren't buying? It's just,
That's basically dropped in half.
I'm just curious.
Well, the board did request.
I'm not criticizing. I'm just curious. Like, I'm curious what we got rid of that if.
Didn't we also ask them to, if you have the amount budgeted, and how much you actually spend? I think that.
Well, no, I'm looking at actual numbers though. Like we actually budgeted to start for 2024 at 135, but then we spent 203, and then 2025 we started with 118, 118,000. But so far, it's up to it's budgeted was increased to 150. So I'm just, you know, we started lower and had to increase. So I'm just curious.
And as the fiscal year progresses, we do move those budgets around through transfers, net zero transfers. So we do have the line items in front of us, so we're looking for. Foundations.
That's what we bought. And so then, sorry.
That's a significant
Yeah.
increase.
Yep, perfect.
And just to give some additional context, at the June 12th meeting, as a part of one of DESI's requirement to identify a resource for reading, it includes that. So the resources that were included, the support that were backed out of the budget.
Okay, great, thank you.
Got it?
We ready to move on to the elementary school?
Thank you. Yep, perfect.
Fantastic. Okay, the elementary school, not as many cuts here, but you'll see some of the other buildings. So on the salary side, we're increasing 184,000. On the benefit side, 24,000, right at 25,000. Of course, that will be higher for our former discussion. Purchase services are at 91,577, and supplies is at 127,403. Increases on supply side, 14,777, and then increases on the purchase service side of just about 56,000, a little over 56,000 there. And then, of course, the benefits, 24,838 and 184,319 for benefits and salaries respectively.
Is the purchase service increase due primarily to the laptop refresh that's referenced in the paragraph, in the narrative?
Those are in supplies.
Oh, okay, so no.
More than like.
Substitute teachers.
Substitute teachers is a big portion of it,
All
and
right.
also professional development.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Chris, is that also capturing any portions of Capstone in that budget for purchase
Capstone's
services?
also in elementary school. That's been an ongoing line item, but we did reduce Capstone slightly
Saw that,
from
yeah,
the prior year,
yeah.
from 35,000 to 25,000.
Yeah, perfect, thank you.
Reductions have been made, just the net does not reflect that.
Any other questions?
All right, moving on to the middle school. Okay, just want to make sure we're all looking at the same things here. On the middle school, increasing salaries to 1.864 million. That's up 196,000 or 11, almost 12% on the salary side. Benefits increasing 14,000 or 2.5% for the reasons discussed previously. Purchase services slightly up at 14,636 or 11.6%, while supplies are down at 15,334, less than the prior year, and that is also for reduction in the foundations. And we'll talk about it here as we get to some of the departmental budgets if we make it that far this evening. But the pilot, the resource pilot that we're engaging in this fall will add those monies back to other aspects of the budget.
So this, just to kind of give some additional clarity, foundations was removed from ECC and elementary. And so I think for the supplies decrease, Mr. Zitzer just does a really good job of looking at current resources, but I believe he decreased some additional items too. So if the board is interested in what those items are, we can provide that.
Yes, and we wouldn't have those unless he put them in the budget and then we reduced them for him.
Yeah.
And when you say foundations has been removed, you don't mean that we're not doing it anymore, but that the upfront costs of like training and purchasing curriculum and things like that
Correct.
have happened already.
And as this is middle school, foundations isn't there anyway, so
Yeah.
I misspoke in that regard. The elementary and ECC are the ones that have the foundations. My notes are a little scrambled here. Apologize for that, but the supplies costs are somewhat down, and I would say that Mr. Zitzer is extremely frugal at being.
To answer Katie's question, so what we found through the curriculum work completed by Dr. McGee and those teachers and staff members is that there were some resources that included phonics and phonemic awareness, but they were not necessarily, all of the other districts around were supplanting because they didn't think that the resource really covered it. So we already have teacher resources, we're just not purchasing the consumables that go with it. So if they notice that there is a gap and they need to use foundations, they're able to do that. And unlike other districts, we actually have trained facilitators for like letters training and some of those things to provide support. So they will still have an opportunity to utilize foundations. We just won't purchase the consumables for students. Yes.
I shouldn't ignore the metaphor that a big portion of the purchase services on the middle school side is directly related to the school as expedition metaphor.
Majority of it.
Yeah.
Yes. In fact, the majority, yes. Okay, so on to the high school. Salaries increases here are at 158,000, 7.2. We do have a number of teachers at the top of the salary scale over there, so the increases may not have been as drastic as some of the others in that regard. Just under 25,000 increases on the benefit side, a decrease of 2,500 on the purchase services side, with a decrease of 5,500 on the supply side, and capital outlay was reduced 8,057 to 0.
I just had a question, in the narrative, we talked about we're decreasing, limiting early college and dual credit. Is that for kids who enroll moving forward, I assume?
It is, yes.
Okay, okay.
The ones that began that program
We
in
will
the
finish
prior
that,
year,
okay.
we'll finish that out,
Yes,
and then
all right.
we'll make that change for the
Okay.
incomers.
Perfect.
Good question.
Yeah. Any other questions?
All right, back down to the SSC, which is now proudly housed on the middle school, high school campus. Okay, we have an increase there. Remember, the staff there is quite small, as you can see by the numbers. $494,170, which is a $46,201 increase, or just a little north of 10%. Benefits a little south of 10%, with purchase services reduced 20,524 and supplies reduced 7,313. In addition to asking them to be more frugal, the purchase services side, there were some items that they were engaging in the prior 2 years that have now been removed. Dr. Jameson, would you like to speak to those?
Sure. So as we were exploring competency-based education, the alternative school program was actually looking at several different models, but now that we're working with I4PL, the alt services program will begin to work with them, and those fundings will come out of the CBE grant. So looking at using the funds that we have versus expending additional funds for that.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Okay, on to your budget, the Board of Education. Dr. Jameson, could I lean on you to walk them through this one?
Absolutely. So, and looking at purchase services, the survey, thank you for completing it. We budget for participation in the Missouri School Board Association, and also additional funds being allocated for just-in-time professional development to the board. Examples of that would be MSBA coming in and things of that nature. And then costs for supplies, which would be any supplies that we're using when professional development is brought in, as well as snacks and things like that for our long executive session. So the reduction is based on previous year's expenditures. So we looked at the past 3 years, looked at what we purchased, and then made decreases where we saw we did not expend the amount of funds that were there. But this captures everything, including any PD requests that MSBA is offering, and those usually the cost for that is pretty slim.
This includes legal fees too, right?
So legal fees actually for this year, are they added to the board's budget? In
Yeah.
previous years, we had them elsewhere. So there was a slight increase. Looking at where we're headed, I'm assuming that we should see some decreases moving forward.
Currently, we're budgeting $45,000 for the year. If we get different information prior to the budget going live, we'll certainly make that change.
I was just trying to clarify that for the community, like, we're not spending $100,000 on
No.
professional development for us.
No.
Like, it says, it
No.
includes a lot more than just,
Yes.
yeah, okay.
Yes, and in the
Sorry.
narrative, I think it does.
I think there's is there insurance, some sort of insurance in there too?
Yeah, there's some of that in there,
Yeah,
too,
so
yeah.
there's some other things that are, maybe you might not think of as.
Yeah, election fees is a big portion of that
Yes,
too. And
yeah.
the more things we have on the election, the more expensive that is. And
Yeah. Any questions?
Okay, on to the superintendent budget. Again, Dr. Jameson, would you like to?
I'm frugal in expenditures, so you will see that for purchase services, there was a 41% decrease, as well as for supplies, 34%. And so normally, Chris Holzer gets lots of my budget back, and so instead of budgeting at the front end, I just reduced the funds for that. This is enough for me to continue to operate and support district goals, as well as principals if needed. There is required professional development there, so where you see purchase services as a part of MSBA and also AASA, superintendent has to attend the superintendent's conference. That's typically the only conference that I attend, with the exception of MSBA, which I accompany the board for that. So at this point, based on previous year's expenditures, we've allocated funds for professional development, which have been the same for the last few years. And then also any purchase services supplies for community engagement is also included in that as well. Any questions about the superintendent's budget or the reductions that were made from the previous year? Perfect.
Okay, the next budget we will discuss then is the assistant superintendents of curriculum and instruction, and then also of human resources. I scroll to it, here we go. Okay, so salaries and benefits, we've discussed that, so we don't need to perseverate on that, but they have increased 5.7 and 7.5% respectively. And those numbers represent $27,165 for salaries and $9,858 for benefits. Purchase services increases $54,341, and supplies a slight increase at $667. When it comes to the assistant superintendent's budgets, we are primarily looking at, especially on HR side, the purchase services that you see primarily support our substitute teacher costs with our contract from Kelly Services. This number, as we are getting to the end of the year, as we examine the general ledger, we are seeing sub costs have increased beyond what we've budgeted in a number of the areas. So Tony and I took a good look at that yesterday, and we'll continue to look at that next week to make sure that we put in the numbers that we think are going to happen. Subs is probably one of the most difficult areas to budget for. We don't always know what's going to happen. If somebody ends up needing a surgery mid-year and have to go out for an extended period of time. But sometimes we do know. So we do know of a couple of occurrences, so we've increased those budgets accordingly to support those folks being out for an extended period of time. Dr. Jameson?
Yeah, I was just going to add, it also includes any hiring fairs that Dr. Ambrose Phillips attends, if there's a fee for that, and any materials and resources needed for that as well are included in that budget too.
So all substitute teachers are in this budget, or?
Almost all.
Okay,
Who's not included in that?
because didn't the elementary budget increase because of subs?
Yeah, there was one. The ECC?
If that's in there, we need to edit that.
Which one, Chris, is that? I'm just taking notes as we
Purchase
go through.
services for elementary says cost increase related to substitute
yeah.
teachers.
Yeah,
That
somebody
needs
has
to come
that
out.
question.
Is that, so did you pull that, Chris, just out of curiosity? Because I know we break them out by building, so I'm just kind of curious if this is,
Substitute teachers are in Department 30,
okay,
which is human resources and assistant superintendent.
perfect.
The building is represented at Department 20, which is instruction.
All right, so we'll make a note for
So we'll
adjustments
correct
there.
that
And
there.
it would be interesting, obviously, to know by building.
Yeah.
But I totally understand if this cost center is just in HR. so.
Yeah, I guess we could,
So then the elementary increase then is really professional development, just that
So-
and trash and utilities, which I would assume applies everywhere, right?
yes.
In every building, okay.
Okay, so right now, let's go to
It's
elementary,
like
40/40.
It's like 3 times.
Right now, we're budgeting $150,000 for elementary certified subs and $160,000 at the early childhood center, $100,000 at the middle school, and $100,000 at the high school.
And this will be based on trends from previous year.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't love it either. It's one of the more,
Yeah.
and then we also have our non-certified subs, which are significantly lower just because we don't have as many non-certified folks.
So you budgeted 160 ECC, 135 E elementary, 100 middle school, and 100 high school?
Yes.
Okay, that totals 495.
There are also other subs that are not included. So for example, you would have subs for nurses.
Yeah.
We have subs for,
But the purchase services budget is only 489
Yeah.
in that HR.
It's fine, they're in there. And we also, and Trent, you made a good point. We adjusted these numbers yesterday. Yes, so the
The number
numbers
you're
that we
looking at
just
is different.
stated are not captured here.
Yeah,
Those will be
Okay.
in the next draft.
Okay,
so that one will go up.
Yeah.
and if we can look at that, Chris, to go back and see if we want to break that out, even though we have a total, if we want to attach it to the building so that it's clear what the subtotals are. We can talk about that when we meet.
Yeah.
Okay.
or maybe pull the
Just
subs
separate
out
them
as a separate entity.
We could probably do that quicker.
Want to do
Instead of, you got business, office, and technology, just pull substitutes out.
Yeah, I could probably extract those with not too much trouble.
Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Catch that up here.
communications budget.
Okay, the communications budget. Mr. Rich, I'm not calling you to speak to your own budget, unless you'd like to. Okay, there we go. Salaries have actually decreased along with benefits, and that is due to the elimination of a support staff position that was originally connected to the department. But then we have a slight increase, just under $5,000 to the purchase services side, and a decrease to supplies by $8,000. So I think we are reducing, Mr. Rich, correct me if I'm wrong, but I do believe we're reducing your double community mailing from 2 to 1. Yes, so that's primarily the difference that you see here. We're looking through for any other notable changes.
And would that be a supply? Or
It's
captured in supply?
It's
Probably
purchase.
a lot. It's probably purchase service.
Purchase service.
Yes, and then
okay.
there's also
There's a
postage.
printing.
Yeah.
So
Yes,
that'll go
printing and
down,
postage,
you're
yeah.
saying. This includes 2, and it'll go down to 1.
Yeah,
All right,
mailing.
perfect.
And as we update the budget for the next iteration that comes through, we're going to do strike through so that the board can see
Thank
what
you.
changes are made.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Okay, on to the business office. Salary increases 49,950. Benefits increases 7,353. Purchase service decrease 62,478, and then a decrease in supplies of $812. So these budgets hold the majority of our insurances. We have the board paid liability insurance, the treasurer's liability insurance. Audit fees are also captured here. All purchase services. We have our Education Plus dues. We have a small $2,500 line item for consultants as needed, which we often don't use. Professional development for the team, and along with postage, we sometimes end up backfilling postage if a building goes over or forgets things. And then, let's see, I also hold the general contingencies in the business office budget, so that number is large as a result of that. And I believe our contingency right now I've got set at $100,000, and that's just the rainy day fund in the event that either a particular department building or something large happens that we need to be able to fund. And then the SSD tuition we have set at $35,000. Also the purchase service. All in all, it's about a $6,000 decrease over the prior year.
Insurance is in purchase services, is that right? So how, I know it went up, what are we eliminating that we're able to get such a savings? Do we know?
We're looking.
Okay. I know it went up a lot.
And we are still reevaluating. We did get a note from Ron Orr, the CEO of Music, which is our insurance collaborative, on what to expect for rates. The rate increases, he tells us, will be modest for the coming year, but we're going to make sure that our budget can hold those, so we're not surprised like we were in this year.
It's just it went down, I'm just curious.
Yeah, we're gonna have to compare side by side. Let me
Yeah,
get back
that's
to you
fine.
on that.
Yeah, perfect, thank you.
And Chris, I took a note, so I'm taking notes, so you'll have that.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions?
Not on this one.
All right.
Okay, on the salaries, moving to technology. Significant decreases on the salary side to the tune of $154,012 and $39,483 decrease on the benefit side. That's a result of the restructuring of the department. However, we do have a $138,000 increase to the purchase services side to accommodate for the managed IT and networking services is the primary increase there. On the supply side, $41,416. Capital outlay is at $64,120, which is a significant reduction over the prior year. Some of that is moving things into supplies from capital outlay with the change of the threshold. And Tony, if you could switch over to capital outlay to see what I'll pull out of there. Well, that was for this year. Last year. Yeah, the majority of that's just moved from one category to the other. There was also,
Chris, what was the category movement, just so the board is aware? Do you have notes on that?
I'm sorry?
The things that you moved, just so they know, or is it something we need to get back?
We just built the budget that way. We didn't
Okay.
necessarily move them.
Okay.
So I have a couple of questions. One is not really budget related, but are the teachers supportive of the moving to Apple instructional ecosystem versus Chromebooks?
So I would say at the ECC, that has been an ongoing ask prior to this year. And so Abby Irwin and Dr. McGee have actually been hosting sessions and sending out surveys to get feedback from staff. We have not received any feedback indicating that they are not. And so as outlined in the strategic plan, and looking at our CBE grant, it allows us to expand the innovation with the iPads, but it also gives us an opportunity to download apps that can help with center activity for kids at the lower grades, but also it does mastery tracking and allows some alignment to some standards. So it does expand student ability, and developmentally, particularly for K2, I think it's a better use than a Chromebook.
And then where in the budget is the Apple instructional ecosystem? Is it split between a capital outlay and a purchase service? And what is the total cost of that?
The total cost of the iPads?
Yeah,
Chris?
I mean, it's an ecosystem, so I don't understand that. It's probably not just hardware, it's probably also some sort of Apple service.
Chris, jump to, so that item is actually coming in the June 12th budget, but we do have the
Okay.
prices for that if you
So
want
we're
to
gonna
get.
do, we're gonna do it,
Yes.
we're gonna do it later.
Yes.
Next week.
Okay, I'll just
But the
square my-
majority, so to answer your question generally though, it's iPads, the cases for them as well. And I've not yet seen an allocation for apps or things like that, but I believe that is, if it's not in there, it will be coming.
It's included in the presentation, also pencils. I think the middle school asks for keypads to ensure that they have the ability to type and do those things. So all of that will be in the June 12th, and the presentation there will include a multi-year forecast for what the cost would be if the district would actually use Chromebooks, and then what that cost looks like if we actually use iPads. So it's actually a cost savings because the Chromebooks value when you sell them back is minimal, but the value for selling iPads back at end of life, whether we choose to actually sell those back to families or sell them back to an external purchaser, we actually would get more money back, so it's value add.
Hold their value better.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what sold me on it. I mean, I've been wanting to go back to that for years. The numbers didn't work. And Dr. McGee and Abby were able to present numbers that actually did make it work. So we're pleased to see that.
Okay.
It's a welcomed change.
I have a question.
Oh, go ahead, Brian.
It's not really a budget, it's not really related to the budget of these iPads, but who has been asking questions about whether K through 2 children should be using digital technology in the classroom anyway? Who has been asking those questions? Who's been looking into the developmental benefits of having technology pushed down into that young of an age? I'm skeptical, obviously you can tell from my question, but who else has looked into this, and what has been discussed?
You missed the studio night, Brian, where the first graders had done their own podcasts and things like that. I mean, there's a lot of technologies happening.
iPads for every kid every day with keyboards and Apple pencils.
Well, I think to answer your question, I think the leadership team, if it wasn't last year or the year before, we actually went to Apple to look at how we can augment. And with the Chromebooks, and as we talk about, long story kind of made short, allowing teachers to have an opportunity to do small group instruction, which is, and I'll use the ECC as an example, which is a focus for them. The iPads actually expand their ability to be able to do the work. So these aren't conversations that admin is just having. They are ongoing conversations that have been at the forefront of the work that we've been doing, particularly as you think about the strategic plan. But whether they have iPads, they currently have Chromebooks. So really the conversation is not, do they need them at all, but which device are we using? Because they currently have Chromebooks. So we would just be removing the Chromebooks and replacing them with iPads to increase the level of engagement of students in content aligned to our competency-based efforts. So hopefully that answers that.
It doesn't quite answer it, but yeah, I understand what you're saying. But this might be an opportunity if we're going to move beyond the Chromebooks. It's an opportunity at least to re-ask that question of whether it's developmentally appropriate to have K through 2 children using these devices in the classroom. I'm hoping somebody is having that conversation. I'd like to know what the results of that conversation are. I'm deeply skeptical of their educational value. Other than I am certainly aware, and my own children benefited, even at kindergarten, from having access to an iPad that provided them some accelerated learning beyond what was going on in the regular classroom. And then in one case, one of my children was able to use an iPad and an app on it when they were in first grade to do some remedial
we're not able to be at school, right? So you're gonna have to have a device for every child so that at least you can continue that. I think the question is too, like, I don't think they're using them all day, every day, so.
Even every day.
Or every day, so maybe that's part of the discussion is educating us on how they're used.
How much do they currently use the Chromebooks?
But I think
and how
for-
often they pulled out?
In terms of, you know, educational equity, we need to allow not every child has a device at their house that they could log in and attend school virtually if they needed to. So I think that's why you need to have one for every child.
But we're not in that situation right now.
Yeah, but they're.
But you have to be
I
ready, right?
understand,
No one's
Jenny.
ready for COVID.
I just want to hear about the,
That came out of nowhere, so.
I want somebody who's, you know, who has some expertise in this area to comment on whether or not this is the best use of our resources and whether K through 2 children should have these devices. I think.
Would you like us to hire a consultant?
There was education that happened for devices and even when children were home from school, so.
I will say though, as someone who has small children at one time, an iPad would be much easier for a kindergartner to use than a Chromebook. So
And that's what we-
I will say, if you're talking about which type.
And that is what we found.
Yes, and that was the argument, is that is
Because
an
we-
easier device.
We
to
also
use.
use these devices for benchmarking
Yeah.
and some of our assessments, and the Chromebooks were just,
Seems like Brian's questions could be addressed next week during the
I think so.
presentation.
Yeah,
Yep.
that would be great, yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
okay, on operations. There we go. Okay, operations, so I always struggle with what to call this, since we created the operations department. That really is an amalgamation of buildings and grounds, maintenance, custodial, food service. We've broken them apart. So first we'll do operations, which is primarily the office of the director of operations. So the salaries you see here are directly related to the running of the operations department at the administrative and executive assistant level. Purchase services here, $355,000, down $1,842 from the prior year. Supplies are down $8,153, and capital outlay is down $24,000. Let's see. We always keep good notes on the cuts so that the budgets of the people we're cutting understand what we've done. So some of the purchase services, you do see that that's a big number, is we pay a portion, I'm not sure if you knew this or not, but we pay a portion, I believe it's a 50-50 split of our SRO salaries and benefits, so that's captured in here as well, along with Strategos or Strategos, I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce that. We do have some property insurances that are captured here, that's the lion's share of this, along with building rental. And then supplies, uniforms and supplies for the department, and then travel and professional development expenses, and some small, we have interpreter services. We've hired some international employees that don't necessarily speak English as well, so we've needed to hire interpreters for that, and then we also have $1,000 budgeted for any consultants or specialists that we might need for specific tasks that we're not able to address in-house.
Questions?
Okay, on to maintenance. So we have reduced, we've eliminated a maintenance position. We actually never filled it, but it was in the budget, so we pulled it. And then we went ahead and locked that in for the fiscal '26. So you can see there's an $84,000 decrease in salaries, a $33,000 decrease in benefits, purchase services, a decrease of $4,000, and an increase in supplies of about $9,400. For capital outlay, $85,000. Again, these are just projects that are being moved from the operating side of the budget over to the bond issue side. All in all, we're just under a $200,000 decrease. So this is probably one of our largest departmental decreases that we've seen in this coming year.
And you'll see additional decreases going through as we go through the remaining portions of the department from a staffing standpoint as well.
So I guess I have a question here about how we're categorizing, not necessarily the projects, like the catch-up that we're doing as far as deferred maintenance, but once we kind of get caught up with all the maintenance that needs to get done, what we're doing to budget for continuous maintenance, because we're not always going to be able to rely on bonds. So I guess if that, I don't know if this is the appropriate place to put it, but I'm concerned that if we keep maintenance in the bond portion of it, it's not accurately going to reflect what the needs will be.
So the care and upkeep of equipment and facilities is captured in this one.
Oh, okay, so it's
Yes,
not,
it's
okay,
there.
so it's not,
Yes.
okay, gotcha. Okay, never mind then.
It is a little bit lower though, because we are replacing a bunch of that stuff, so.
Gotcha.
It's been extraordinarily expensive this year, well,
Yeah.
for the past 2 years to maintain those pieces of equipment that we're replacing, so it's definitely time.
But we did talk about at one time having more money in the maintenance budget or operations budget on an annual basis so that we aren't going out for big bond issues
Correct.
as often. And it seems like we've gone down in 2026, perhaps because this is a bond year, but is there going to be any sort of allocation in future budgets to, or is that a to be determined type of
Well,
thing?
I'm sure it will be, Trent. Again, we've lowered it slightly just because of the volume of the pieces of equipment and such that we're replacing in this coming year. But we've heard you loud and clear, so whomever's creating that budget for the prior year.
Okay,
And Dr. Dietrich's aware of that need as
yeah.
well.
Yeah,
know
I mean, I do think it's.
Long-term plan.
Yeah, it's the balance of, while we have this $15 million, we should put as much into
agree.
it as possible, right? But yes, after that 3-year period, increased maintenance costs.
Okay, good questions. Thank you for those. Custodial. So we have reduced a number of custodial positions. Dr. Dietrich has created a formula, an algorithm, if you will, to determine the staffing needs for the buildings. And as he's now completing his second year in the role, he's really getting a good picture about what is required to keep the buildings clean and maintained. So he's made those strategic shifts. Benefits have decreased in kind. Supplies are up. Again, I want to address the $66,000 on the capital outlay. That was for a large piece of equipment that the board approved last year, that automated floor scrubber that is now essentially replaced the position. So I'm not sure if you've been at the buildings recently, but with the reorganization of employees and where they're placed, and along with this machine, even at the end of the year, the floors are looking better than they have in quite some time. So that's why that's not there. It's a one-time purchase. And then on the supply side, these are custodial supplies.
Will soon be replaced by robots anyway.
Yeah, I bumped into one of those at Quick Trip the other day.
Any other questions?
Okay, on the transportation side, salaries increasing to $72,000. I feel like this warrants explanation. So, because we were understaffed on the bus drivers, we did transfer salaries from salaries to purchase services, as we contracted the use of first student drivers. So we were essentially renting drivers that were driving our buses from First Student. That relationship is ongoing, but now we are virtually, I think we have made some shifts recently, but nearly fully staffed on the driver's side. And we also have 2 part-time drivers. So the need for the contracted services has waned slightly, but that could change at any moment depending on staffing. We do notice the most turnover happens within the operations department, unfortunately. So that is why you see that dramatic shift. That's really what's happened there. And then the decrease to purchase services is well, you can see what happened.
Yeah, we got it.
Yep, get it.
My brain is not producing the words necessary to adequately describe it. And then on the supply side, we've reduced that as well.
For transportation, I know that we talked about this a little bit before, about transporting
No, that's captured in student services
Okay.
department.
Yes, it's included there, Chris, because I remember when we were reviewing Vince's.
Well, I just didn't know why they were separate, like,
Because those are
what's like,
Mr. Estrada's budgets.
oh, I see.
And it's a different type of funding
It's a
too
different
for
type of
that.
funding. We don't get, well, we do get reimbursed on some
Yes,
of that, but it's a cost sharing. As
Like
opposed-
between districts?
Yes.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, so if it costs $100 a month to transport a student with a cab, we pay 50 and the partner district pays 50.
Gotcha.
And then DESE would reimburse us on the formula that they use based on our 50%.
And I guess another question I don't quite understand, so these students that, are they unhoused or?
There's a multitude of reasons why this happens. Dr. Jameson's done that work, so I'll let her speak
Yeah,
to it.
so typically, you have unhoused students, you may have students who are in foster care, so those students usually fit there. In some cases, we have a residency side of that, which also is captured in reimbursement for that, which is for if you have a grandmother who has guardianship with the parent. So that's typically how that works.
And how is that different than the Joe's Place situation?
We typically, with Joe's Place, we have the students actually being housed there, so we don't have to pay for transportation in that regard.
What happened in the distinction? Like,
Well, it's up to the parents. So usually with Joe's Place, if we have students there, they stay there during the week. So there is no charge for transportation. It's only for students who are residing in other school districts that we have to share costs for. And some parents choose to transport, so there wouldn't be a cost for that. But for those who don't, we actually share the cost with the other school districts.
And Josh, I'm going to correct myself. We did move this into the transportation budget. So the homeless transportation is covered here. It's 15,000.
Oh, okay.
I apologize for that. I thought we had moved it. We did not. We only have 2,000 accounts, so every once in a while,
Is it in?
Vince manages.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
I have a similar question. Now I'm not sure what the answer is going to be. Because what about for student activities? Like when we use the bus drivers to do student activities, is that in this or is that in the student activity budget?
It's not in student activities. It's mixed between athletics, the athletics budgets,
Okay.
and also in the transportation
Okay,
budget.
so it's into.
Yeah, so we've tried to move it. We're trying to do things a little bit more efficiently.
Okay.
So we're trying to, some days are better than others, but we're trying to move those costs for those contracted trips for contests
Yeah.
to the department that's incurring
It's
those costs.
using them.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Rashad has budgeted for those.
Okay.
I think we may even reduce that budget a little bit. Games, yeah, so we're budgeting 3,000 on that for, but that is in the athletics budget.
Okay. Thank you.
Oh, and I know there's probably no answer to this, but if, assuming the track does get completed and all that stuff, and we're able to charge for it, is there an estimate about how much revenue that might potentially?
I'm not sure if Dr. Dietrich's done those numbers. I've not been presented with anything in that regard.
So there's a possibility that we might be able to bring money in.
There is a possibility, definitely. But of course, our students would need to get priority.
Right.
And also, we tend to be one of the better deals in town.
What I'm saying is, like, if we're, hosting a tournament or something,
Oh,
like
absolutely.
if other districts are charging us to be there.
Absolutely.
Like what? Yeah.
Just like speech and debate, that's a perfect example. When we had that tournament, I don't remember what the proceeds were. $3 grand. $3 grand. So, that's not insignificant, especially with some of our programs that are helping fund themselves, so. Okay, onward and forward. What do we have next? Assessment? Okay, this is.
We skipped utilities.
Oh, we
Utilities.
skipped utilities, okay.
I-
So.
Go
Yes.
ahead. I would like to know, or remind me, what is in supplies in utilities?
I believe that is gas,
I can't,
natural gas.
because I always think of utilities as a purchase service.
I know, and I think it's because we're purchasing a gas, which is a thing.
Okay. So that's heat.
And I don't control that. Okay, heating is a supply, yes. Heating is gas, natural
Okay,
gas.
thank you.
And DESI says that we must code that as a 6400, which is a supply. It was a surprise to me when I started doing this work 9 years ago. I don't really understand it.
Just a big number.
Where's water? Do we have water as a supply too?
I'm guessing, because it's the bigger one.
One's ethereal and the other one is more
So water and sewer are actually a purchase service. So seemingly contradictory methodologies.
Interesting.
Okay.
I just do what the manual tells me.
And then electricity then, though,
It's
is
a
probably
purchase
purchase service,
Interesting.
which is contributing to our heat, but,
Yes.
okay, so mostly gas. All right. Got it.
Okay. And we are moving on to assessment. There we go. All right, so assessment is increasing. You can see the salaries increases here. Benefits as well. Purchase services decreased and supplies have increased slightly. So this is where our benchmark assessments, map testing, EOCs, you name it, it lands here. I think I've heard that we're moving away from
Not, at the middle school level, we are transitioning from NWEA back to STAR to ensure continuity for K-8. And it better prepares and allows teachers to look at data differently. In NWEA, we're finding has some limitations for that, but it also includes AP, cost for AP tests, ACT, things of that nature.
And just so you know, these account strings are very long, lots of digits, but those are captured in building budgets. They're just at in a different slice. Because Ms. Ward manages these budgets, those are in her department, which is Department 33, but they are split apart by building inside of those budgets. As a matter of fact, her salary is too. It's one of those.
So I understand,
Yes.
so this is just a portion, she has a portion of the cost, and then each building has a portion of the cost, correct?
Correct,
All right.
but the
As-
schedules in this presentation this evening, the buildings do not contain those assessments. They are
They're all
solely contained here,
Okay,
yes.
okay.
Yes.
All right, perfect, thank you.
And the assessment plan will be coming to the board at the June 12th meeting,
Yep.
and with all of the information broken out for the assessments across the year, across buildings.
And I apologize, it's confusing, it's just.
No, that makes
the way-
sense, I got it. No, that's fine, thank you.
So there seems to be inconsistent rationale here between what was presented in the high school around the dual credit courses being covered only for free and reduced price or free and reduced lunch eligible students, and then advanced placement being covered for all students. Is there anything you can say about that?
Yep, so in working with Ms. Huffman and looking at what the costs were and the number of students who were actually participating from free and reduced lunch categories. So for AP classes, we would pay for the first AP test for all students. And then there's a process that the high school developed working with the high school counselors to identify students who would basically make a request if they need support with actually paying. So in my conversation with Ms. Ward, they've looked at the number of students who've qualified, looked at the students who are close, because we recognize that some students don't qualify but still need support. And then for dual credit, the same type of process for that. And then for early college, as Jenny alluded to, we would pay for the kids who are currently in, but we'd use the same process for that as well.
So we are going to use that process moving forward, you're saying? Or we're gonna pay for it?
We're paying for early college, the kids who are already
No,
in.
I'm saying for the AP, I think to Katie's point, we have been paying for all the AP exams
Yes.
forever, but going forward.
Yes.
We are not, we're going to use that same process.
Yes, we would pay for the first test for AP for any student who submits for AP testing, and
Okay.
any test outside of that would go through that process.
And are we gonna push that communication out to parents like late summer so they know? Because
Yes.
that's gonna be a shift for people and they, just so they know before they go into it.
The high
Yeah,
school is aware
perfect.
that they're supposed to
Perfect.
engage families.
Perfect.
When you say first test, you mean like first subject test or first time you take the test?
First subject test.
Oh, okay.
So if you take 3 APs, you'll pay for one, and then you're in charge for the rest? Okay.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, when we started talking with Ms. Huffman about this, my first question to her is, what have you already told parents?
Yeah, yeah.
Because you're right, it will be a change and it will be an adjustment, but I also believe it's an adjustment that's worth making.
Oh, for sure, for sure. I just, you don't want to catch people off guard.
Yes.
And then to clarify for the ACT, we pay for one administration for each student? Okay, not until you get the score that you want to get? Okay.
One administration, and we
Okay.
will be tracking that because we've had some instances where we paid for multiple.
Okay.
But if they take the class, are we still paying for it?
That's
No, we
Well,
are,
because that was a thing, and
As a
I
matter
feel
of-
like if it's part of a class,
I feel like,
we should.
I know for a fact we are not, but that class focuses on only the English portion.
Okay.
So,
So that's something I tell people too, because I think that was because that's their fine.
yes, and
So
I'm
they-
sure Dr. Jameson's probably, if she hasn't, she will reinforce, but that's a conversation Ms. Huffman and I have had as well.
I took a note. I'll
Because
follow
if it's a
up.
final and then kids, yeah.
Yes.
Can we go back to Katie's question a moment ago? I just want to make sure I heard her question correctly and then the answer.
About the ACT?
Yes, what was it you asked again?
I asked, I am very supportive of us having universal access to the ACT, but my question was, do students get to take it as many times as they want or once on our dime? And the response was once.
Yeah, in their junior year, I think in April, is that correct?
No, this is the right.
Yeah, I think we do the administration in their junior year.
Junior year,
Yeah.
11th grade.
Yeah.
And,
We also do the pre-ACT.
Yes.
That's what I was just wanting to
In 10th
clarify from Katie's question.
Yeah.
The pre-ACT is offered
sophomore.
And that's actually a conversation,
in the sophomore year. Yeah.
that's actually one of the conversations we've had with Ms. Ward, is making sure that the data that's resultant from that pre-ACT is being used to inform instruction on the actual ACT.
So what we're finding is that students are taking the pre-ACT and additional work around how that data is being used has not occurred on a large scale. So we also had a conversation with Ms. Huffman, I think,
Yes.
this week about
Yes,
that.
I think we had conversations with our respective.
Yes. It's been busy.
We are definitely on the same page in that regard.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Okay, on to curriculum development, Department 32. We have an increase in salaries and benefits. We have a decrease in purchase services and a significant increase in supplies. So when we were going through the building budgets, I did mention decreases there, but now we have increases here. The curriculum development, or C&I department, covers the adoption portion, the pilot and the adoption. So we call it just the first adoption. So if we're adopting a new physics text, Dr. McGee's budget would cover it the first time, then it would slide into all of the fill-in texts that would be fill-in, loss or damages would be supplied by the building budgets. So what you're seeing here are the costs for illustrative,
For math,
for math.
yes. You will see coming at the next board meeting, the resources that were selected by the
Yeah, we have Imagine Learning
ECC, so it'll be K-8 that will be coming forward. So you will more than likely see a shift from this budget to the next one that comes.
Yes, and we have, Imagine Learning, illustrative, and then we also have the actual adoption of the literacy resources that we piloted this year. Those are living here.
So those just kind of a slight shift. So no pilot, the curriculum committee went through, they reviewed the resources, they saw presentations from the companies that were actually contracting out, and based on their curriculum committee, identified the resources that they will be rolling out for next year. So that comes at the June 12th budget. So K2 pick benchmark, and then 3 through 8 is CKLA, I believe, which is Amplify, which is reading for that. And so they did have a process, spent the year going through that in their curriculum meeting. So again, that's not reflected here because the board has not approved it. So when the next one comes back, you'll see the shifts in the budget for that.
So the MTSS coordinator, is that budgeted here, or is that budgeted back in the assistant superintendent? Because it's mentioned both places.
Which one?
Yeah.
Position reallocation, so I don't know if it's from language from maybe last year, and then it's
I think so.
reallocated here?
Because we did reallocate it last year, yeah. So
We just moved the
So
position.
it's moved out of assistant superintendent and is now located here.
I believe so.
Okay.
What's this? For the curriculum development, she reports to Chris McGee, and just as a reminder, that position is fully funded through special school district,
Yeah,
so it's an input-output, we don't pay
I just
for
am
it.
trying to figure out from a budget standpoint.
Perfect, thank you.
Yes, and did you mention,
I was just reminding the board that that position is paid for through SSD fully. But just to Trent's question, that position should be linked to,
Tony's looking it up right now. I
Okay.
believe it is.
okay,
Because the salaries went up in assistant superintendent, but then if the position was allocated, you would expect it to have gone down, but it didn't.
When you see the next draft, we've also cut the.
Maybe it happened in 2025.
Yeah.
That's what it looks like.
Yes, exactly. And just so you know how I handle the MTSS position, like internally, is I budget for 50% of it. Because we bill SSD twice a year. So in January, we invoice them for the costs that we've incurred since the start of the fiscal. And then in July of the next year, we invoice them for everything that happened January through June. So that
You
way,
get reimbursed for it, so it's
Yes.
actually not even a cost.
It really
Because
isn't.
it
It's
comes
just-
in as revenue.
it is, and we put that revenue back against the expense, which makes that budget whole.
Okay.
It's just, it happens, it crosses years, which makes it a little strange.
Chris, I think I'd see what happened in looking at the narrative, because the assistant superintendent includes CNI, Dr. McGee, and also human resources, and then the one that we were actually looking at is the curriculum budget. So I'm wondering if you added her as a direct report under there, but we can go back
I
and
believe so.
look to
We'll-
make
we'll
sure.
Well, it looks like it went down in 2025, which is you would expect.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's about 50,000 or so about what a half of the thing is. And then, but then it comes back up.
And because when we start the budget process, I budget for the whole thing, and one of the last things that we do, and as a matter of fact, I had Tony do it yesterday, was to slice that in half. So in the next draft, you will see the truest representation.
But there has been a increase of about $100,000 in the budget, and where did that come from for 25 to 26 budget?
In 30,
In the
curriculum development.
curriculum development, in salaries.
Well, some of those salaries will be,
Curriculum development.
let me not speak to that directly. Let's note that as a question that we need to answer.
And we can bring that, Chris, back to the June 12th meeting. I'll take a note for that.
It's just,
Yeah, we'll make a note, we don't want to.
okay, I mean, it's a big increase, 55%.
Well, and again, the full value of that MTSS position is captured in that number that you're seeing. So in the next draft that I present to you, that number will go down by half of what that salary
It went
costs.
up, but then it goes up again by $100,000 from 25 to 26.
For the reasons I just stated, yes.
And we'll bring that item back. Trent,
All right.
just let me look
I
over
just am
that.
trying to understand.
No, that's a great question. We'll bring that back.
Absolutely. Stipends are also included in here. I think that's probably some of that increase you're seeing to 6131 curriculum development. Yeah, the MTSS coordinator position is absolutely captured in Department 32. But so are all of a number of extra duty contracts related to curriculum writing, library, media, our federal programs coordinators captured there as well. Our mentor buddy stipends, curriculum writing, home visits,
Okay, thank you.
all of that is contained in Department 32. On to professional development, I believe, yes. Okay, 56,908% increase in salaries and 6,393 in benefits, a decrease of 188,000 in purchase services and $12,000 increase in supplies. The bulk of these increases are directly related to extra duty stipends related to professional development, some of which are also CBE. Yeah, we have Title II here. We have CBE expenses.
Hey, Chris, if you could just say competency-based education so that community knows that's what CBE is, okay?
And are some of those funded with grant funds?
All
All
the
of it is, right?
competency-based
So, yeah, okay, that's,
education are.
yeah, yep.
I'm gonna have to retrain myself. Okay, on to athletics. So we did increase salary schedules to the comps. The NEA did those comps actually and presented those to us, and we accepted those changes. They honestly weren't terribly expensive to fund. But the salaries you see here are related to our coaches and benefits in kind, purchase services. From what I'm told, the cost for officials is going up quite a bit. I think it's getting harder and harder. I'm sure it's not just soccer and baseball, but it looks like we're also having a hard time getting officials and adjudicators, perhaps even for the speech and debate stuff. But those costs are increasing. Yeah. Yeah, as a matter of fact, $28,000 to officials. And there's also our trainer is captured here as well, as needed, not full-time. And then,
Chris, we got a question around athletics by Jenny.
Oh, no, I was just saying this includes the trainer
yes,
too?
yes.
Not full-time.
Not full-time, but
No.
trainer as many games as we can get on there.
Yeah.
Yes.
But
And we have worked, I actually randomly ran into a person that Mr. Davenport is working to actually try to get scheduled for those games,
Good.
which is a company that we have not used before, so I feel pretty confident about that.
great.
And I also believe another big shift, this is probably the largest increase in addition to the officials increases. We've moved speech and debate into the athletics budgets as well.
Initial
Because it's
support.
me,
Yes.
yeah.
And that was a pretty significant increase as well.
Yeah, Rich.
Well, I wasn't gonna say it.
Are you gonna add a weight room for her speech?
We need the trainer too.
Get some
Massage therapy before debates.
Chris, didn't we increase also for the baseball indoor net for athletics? Is that here?
You know, would you write that down for us to double check if that's captured?
So we,
I remember us talking about
Okay,
it, but I don't remember
okay.
us adding it.
so just as a note, I don't know if it's here or not, but in looking at the price that we were expending to have our softball and baseball teams go to 314, we agreed to add additional funds to actually put that at the high school. So I don't know if it's here or not. We'll double check to make sure. But that will be an addition to the budget if it's not already here.
All right, may I move on?
Yes. Yes.
Moving on to high school activities and clubs. I've given you, there's a really long list of these things that go on at the high school. And I noted a number of them here, but we have captured those salaries and benefits here, and you notice there's no purchase services, as those have been primarily covered with student activities funds. Purchase services funds. We are asking the clubs to fund themselves to the extent possible. Okay, well, that was a long haul.
Yes.
I appreciate your questions and also your patience as we looked up some of the answers to your questions. We will have further answers to your questions as we get into this next week. Are you good with emails? An email to answer those questions?
Well, I think we can do, Chris, is kind of compile them, and then maybe at the onset of the next budget meeting, we start with those, so that way community can hear the responses for that. So I think that's a better approach for it.
Okay.
I have one final question. In the revenue by source, 1,250,673, is that a TIF? That we get for 25,
Yes,
25, that was the TIF?
That was the pilots, yeah, the payments in lieu of taxes. And it's worth noting, I don't know if we're getting a payout on it. I have talked to Amber Withicum, but we've not gotten to that portion yet. But the Hanley South of Folk TIF did close at the end of May. So there might, I'm not sure if there's any residual that will be divided amongst the taxing authorities. There could be yet a payment coming either this year or early next. We'll wait and see on it.
So, yeah, we close on at the end of June, right? Our fiscal year?
The TIF itself was closed out at the end
Yes.
of May.
Yeah.
Our bonds are closing on the
But we may not
26th.
get the money until the next fiscal year?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're crossing
Which is
yourself.
what happened this last year.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And once that, there's hardly any TIFs left. I mean, there's,
Yeah.
Yeah, they're coming soon. I was looking at the schedule. They've been out there for a while.
Mhm. Okay, thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.
Anyone have any other questions?
And if there, this is our first time going through a budget work session this way, so we are definitely open to feedback to make adjustments for next year. And we will continue to keep the purchase services items attached to the next meeting for June 12th, as well as the proposed purchase services for the 25-26 school year.
So I know some people have looked through them all in detail already. For purchase services, is the best way for us to ask questions about that via email, or if someone has some now, should they raise them, or?
So there's hundreds, if not thousands, of lines.
Yeah, no, I know. I mean, we have to try
So
to keep them,
I would-
so email.
I would say-
Email, yeah.
Well, but I think if the goal is to
general
be like community questions, if we can do similar to what we do with
Yeah.
the board asking questions, we can create the document,
And
and then we can actually
Yeah.
categorize them and
Yeah.
come out starting with the questions related to purchase services, so that way that would also be kind of generated to for the 12th meeting.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay,
I mean, I think
okay.
that's good for me.
Questions?
Okay, so yeah, I have questions on just about every single page. I've done sort of a forensic reading of that document, so I have questions on just about every single page. So it's, you want me to send you a list of those questions? I'd rather not type them all out, but just talk through them.
Is it,
What's the best way to go through it?
well, I think we would probably need them so that we can be prepared to actually curate answers. So if you want to scan me what you have, whatever works best for you, and I can have Kat to actually transfer them into our query doc so that we can actually group the questions.
I don't really have something that's scannable, it wouldn't make sense.
Sounds like a job for ChatGPT.
I printed it out.
Well,
Yeah, you could do that.
I'm wondering if
I
we,
just sit and talk with,
yeah, I'm wondering if maybe Brian talks first. That may narrow some of his questions.
Would you like to schedule, do you want me to schedule maybe a Zoom? I know you'll be traveling. Would you like for me to schedule a Zoom for you and Chris to sit down and go through those items?
Yep.
Okay,
that
perfect.
would be most helpful.
Perfect.
I do have probably, a number of items I'd like to recommend eliminating. So I think that should be shared in a public setting rather than.
That would be an email, yeah.
But I'd like to do that publicly. I mean, it's kind of tough to go through in writing.
Did you want to share those and I can capture them so that the board can have some conversation about the items you're recommending?
Yeah, well, how about I talk to Chris first?
Okay.
And then we'll go from there. Yeah, currently the items I have set up for, that I would propose we cut further. I mean, it's totaling well over $100,000, so it's quite a few items.
Oh, Brian, if you wouldn't mind, when you ask him, could you figure out the difference between what is required, like by the state, as far as, like what are we required to do versus what is discretionary? 'Cause I kind of
Yeah,
have a question.
actually, that's exactly my question on about most of these items that I have marked.
Cool.
Yeah, if it's required, obviously it needs to be there. Okay, so thanks. So Dr. Jameson, you'll just email me or Chris, and we'll just set up a meeting.
Right, I'll see what Chris's availability is, and then we'll get something on the books as soon as possible, because we meet again next week.
Great, yeah, thank you.
And thank you, Chris and Tony, for all your work on this. We do know how much work it is, and we appreciate you presenting it to us in a format that was easy to follow. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Oh, all right. Let's put the computer back on here. Action items. Okay, so the first one, the way I understood Mr. Boyd is it's actually just, we need a motion to approve the bond, correct?
At the bond parameters.
If you could look at the language in the,
Oh, okay. Yep. There you go.
it has
Sure.
to be pretty specific.
Okay.
I move to approve the resolution authorizing the issuance of $15 million of general obligation bonds, Series 2025, as presented by Mr. Boyd this evening.
Second.
All those in favor, oh, sorry, any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right. And then next, may I get a motion to enter executive session?
I move to enter executive session in accordance with section 610.021, subsections 1, 3, 9, 13, and section 610.022 of the revised statutes of Missouri on June 5th, 2025 for the following specific reasons: legal matters and personnel matters. Second.
No, someone else has to second.
Can somebody else second?
Second. Any discussion? All right, this is a roll call, so Trent?
Aye.
Loretta? Aye. Katie? Yes. Jenny, yes. Julie?
Yes.